Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. This is brought to you by the Teagasc Roscommon Advisory Services. And this evening, we're going to talk to you about schemes that are important for 2021. My name is Emer, and I'm a Teagasc Walsh Scholar. I'm currently based in Castlereagh. So we're going to talk a little bit today about the organic schemes for 2021, and we're also going to talk about the basic payments, the young farmers, and entitlements. So we all know that schemes can be a very important part of farming today, and I hope at the end of this webinar you'll have a better idea of what's available for you and what's good for you in regards to schemes. At this point, I'd just like to mention that the applications have opened for the new BPS scheme for 2021, and also the extension to the BEAM scheme. So these can be applied for through Ag Food Online or also through your advisor. So I'll just mention at this point that the webinar is being recorded, and that if you don't catch some of it or you want to watch it again, you will be able to see it on YouTube within a couple of days. So that's on the Teagasc Roscommon Longford YouTube. And if you're not following that, you can follow us on Facebook or Twitter, where we will be posting a link to the video. So that will be up in a couple of days. In the webinar tonight, we're going to have Enda and Jerry speak to us. They're both based in Castlereagh alongside me, and also we have Conor Dowling, who's going to help us answer some of the questions at the end. So as you can see down the bottom of the screen, there's a Q&A tab. And in the Q&A tab, you can ask any questions that you might have throughout the webinar, and they'll be answered live by our panelists at the end. So I think without further ado, I'll pass it on to Inda's going starting with the organics. And do you want to start sharing your screen, Enda?
Okay.
That's perfect, Enda.
Okay,
so I think the way it's going to work, we're going to have 20 minutes per presentation, and we're also going to have 20 minutes for the Q&A at the end. So as I said, there is a tab down the bottom to enter in your any questions that you might have. So Enda, if you want to fire away there.
Okay, thanks, Emer. Good evening, everybody. Okay, so look, I have about 30 slides, so I'm going to go to them quite quickly. I have a few slides on the background to organics, just a bit of background information. I have a few slides in on sort of the steps to becoming an organic farmer, and I have a few slides in on the actual organic farming scheme, okay? Right, so look, you might ask, what is organic agriculture, organic farming? So look, people have their own views on it. I suppose myself, my own view was, basically it was maybe a few years ago that it was farming without the use of inputs, artificial inputs, all right? This is a definition here from an international organic movement, okay? So basically what they're saying is, look, organic agriculture is a production system that sustains health of soils, ecosystem, and people, okay? So if you just take a look at the words that are in bold there, it probably gives away a lot of what the whole thing is about, all right? So, and it also relies on ecological processes, biodiversity, and cycles adapted to local conditions, rather than the use of inputs which can adversely affect the environment, okay? So it combines tradition, innovation, and science to benefit the shared environment and promote fair relationships and a good quality of life for all involved, okay? So look, that's just basically, if you just look at the words that are highlighted there, it'll give you a fair handle of what the thing is about, okay? Okay, next slide there talks about the organic regulation. This organic farming is regulated by the EU, okay, and the EU put this regulation in place back in 1991, so it's 30 years ago at this stage now. And as it's an EU regulation, every EU member state then has to have a competent authority as such in the member states. So in Ireland, that department, competent authority is the Department of Agriculture and Food. Okay, so we're looking at organic farming, processors, label, and the whole lot is all covered in this regulation. Okay, so the Department of Ag polices and administer the whole organic schemes in Ireland. Just a few quick slides on organic production in Ireland. So look, in terms of land area, we have about 2% of our land area, and about 2% of the farmers are organic, so it's very small. We're the second lowest in Europe. Just Malta has less than us, okay? Contrast that then with some other countries there like Austria and Sweden. Austria has 20%, Sweden has 17%. The EU average there is 7.5%. So look, we're well behind the EU average, okay? If you take a look down at the bottom here, this EU Green Deal document that was published maybe a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago at this stage, it talks about having 25% of the EU organic land area organic by 2030. Now, that's an aspiration. Whether it happens or not is another story. But look, maybe if we get up to the 7.5%, we wouldn't be doing too bad. So look, we're really low. We're only 2% at the moment, second lowest in Europe. Just a few quick slides there on organic production. The farmers that are farming organically at the moment, there's about 1,750 of them, okay, nationally. And of that 1,750, about 1,384 have cattle, 739 have sheep, 240 are involved in horticulture, 134 into organic cereals, and we have 172 that are into poultry, and 62 of those then are organic dairying. So okay, that's basically the way the schemes or the enterprises break down. Just a quick slide there in terms of where these guys located. Just take a look at Roscommon at the moment here. These are 2017 figures, most recent figures I've come across. Look, we have 189 farmers in Roscommon that are organic, 33 in Longford, okay. But if you take a look at this map, there are kind of 3 clusters of where there's a high concentration of organic farmers. First one there is in Roscommon and Longford. That's a good cluster there. Next cluster is down here in Limerick, South Tipperary. Okay, it's a cluster here. And then in West Cork, there's a big cluster of organic farmers. Most of organic farmers in Cork are located in West Cork, okay? The other thing to note here, look, these are 2012 figures, these are 2017 figures. In 2012, we had 107. In 2017, we're at 190, okay? So it's about 80 guys jumped into organics there, roughly, in 2015. So that should give you a handle on where farmers are located. Just slide here on opportunities that's linked with our organics. Look, it is a sustainable low input system. So from an environmental point of view, you won't find a more environmentally friendly farming system out than organics. Okay. Just be aware if you go down the tracks of organics, there are additional animal welfare considerations you need to take on board. So in terms of space requirements and bedding, and sort of certain things in terms of mutilations that they apply. Okay. Globally, the demand for organic food is on the rise. So look, the global market is somewhere in the region of about 100 billion. Okay, in the EU market is somewhere about 37 or 38 billion, and the Irish market is about 250 million. Okay, and this trend is upwards year on year. Okay. The other thing to note here is, like, why do people go down this organic food? Look, it's a lifestyle choice for some people. They want to scale back, reduce numbers, and then they go down the organic route. Okay, and the other thing is it can increase rural viability. Look, you get an extra check in the post, and that's one thing. The other thing is, if organic, if it's done well, it can be very, quite profitable, as good as any other method of farming as such. So right, that's a bit of background. Okay, so now the next thing I want to talk to you is a few steps in relation to organic conversion. Okay, so look, these are kind of the steps that you would have to go through if you want to become an organic farmer, right? The first thing you need to consider, so first of all, you're considering it, okay? In terms of animal systems, which most farmers in Roscommon and Longford are, the first thing you have to look at there is your stocking rate below 2 livestock units per hectare. So that's 170 kilograms of organic N per hectare, okay? If you're below that, you're eligible, okay? Second thing is a very important thing, is can your animal housing be modified to incorporate a bed and line area? So if you're in organics, cattle have to have access to a solid lie back at all times. So if you're just a slat house there and there's no creep on one side of it, then you probably will need to get a creep into the side that doesn't have one to bring yourself over the line. Okay, so that's a big thing. That's a big stumbling block for a lot of guys. Okay, and the last point there relates to, do you use relatively little or no fertilizer, which a lot of farmers wouldn't be using a whole pile in certainly in parts of the Roscommon and Longford. They'll tick that box very easily. Look, in terms of profit, next thing to consider then is profitability. Is organic farming profitable? Of course, it can be profitable if it's done well. And it's more profitable if you have good land quality. Okay. It's more profitable if you learn the good management of how to operate organically, and there are skills attached with that. So, if you can become good at managing organically and have the skills that go with it, you can be profitable. You need to have a bit of a handle on there and access to markets. Now, beef is probably quite strong, sheep maybe not so much, and organic horticulture is really quite strong enough right along. The next point here talks about access and scheme support. So the OFS is there now this year. It was there back end of 2018, and prior to that, then it was there in 2015. So look, it opens occasionally, right? But I think the direction of travel with the EU is that I foresee this thing open maybe more regularly in the next few years. And the last point there, in terms of producer attitude, so if you're an organic farmer and you have a positive attitude to organics, look, you will do well. But if you're going in with a negative attitude, then look, you're not going to do so well. All right. So that's step one. Step two, then, look, investigate. So look, there are farm walks that we have from time to time. Now, obviously this year and last year with COVID, these things got all got shelved, okay? But in normal circumstances, we run about 10 to 12 in conjunction with the Department of Ag here. And Teagasc run about 10, 12 national farm walks every year on all types of farming, dairy and dry stock, cereals, hort, the whole lot, okay? So they're actually cancelled at the moment, but they are a very good source of information for you, okay? The next thing you need to do is to familiarize yourself with the organic regulations and the standards. So look, there are two certification bodies out there, which we'll come to in a minute. The two of them are Irish Organic Association and Organic Trust. These are the people that you'll have to become a member of, and these are the people that would certify you each year that you're farming to the actual standard, okay? And the last point of area of information there, which is probably one of the better ones to access there, is your local organic farmers. Now, every parish in the country has organic farmers now, so you probably know who they are. Just pick up the phone and have a chat and see what they feel about it. Okay, what are the stumbling blocks that they can see? All right. So I probably would say approach someone that's kind of fairly positive about it. If you approach someone that's very negative about it, then you're not going to maybe get the right take out of it. Look, there's 5 points here that are key to organics that people need to know about. Now, a lot of them are common sense, but look, we'll just go through them for 2 seconds there. The housing, and there's a housing space and bedding requirement. Okay, so the housing, the space requirement is higher in organics than say conventional. Okay, so we're taking, for example, there's a suckler cow there. She has to have 6 square meters per cow, and half that can be slats, but the other half then must be solid area with a lie back, that's bedded with straw or rushes or whatever. Okay, but she has to have access to 3 square meters of solid lie back. Okay. Again, the second point, this is a common sense. Organic feed only allowed. You're not allowed to feed conventional feed once you go into organics. Okay, so generally speaking, not a problem. Can be a problem if you're outside in the month of March or April. Okay, then you're going to have to try and source organic silage from another organic farmer. Okay. The third point here talks about routine dose and prohibitors. Like, you can't really dose the way you had dosed prior to going into organics. Okay. Now, basically, as part of this conversion plan, this is a plan that you draw up before you join organics, and that's sent into the certification body. Part of that process involves getting your vet on board, and you're doing up the veterinary plan that goes into that conversion plan. So the vet will see what the issues are on your farm. So he'll recommend that you maybe dose for fluke or for worms, and you vaccinate for lepto or 8-in-1 or whatever it is. Okay, and basically whatever the vet says goes. But just be aware, you won't be allowed to dose and use drugs as willy-nilly the way you were, okay? But basically, whatever the vet says goes, okay? So don't be one bit afraid that you're not allowed to use veterinary treatments because you are, okay? But maybe not to the same extent. Look, the fourth point there is common sense. Sprays, fertilizers are out, okay? And the last point there is, look, if you go down the organic route, you must purchase organic livestock. You can't just buy conventional stock. There are exceptions, and 2 exceptions are, one is if you're suckler cows there, you can bring in 10% of the suckler cow numbers as replacements every year. So if you've heard of maybe 20 cows there, you can bring in 2 maiden heifers every year from conventional sources. And in terms of sheep there, if you had a flock of, say, 100 ewes, you can bring in 20%. So that's, 20, say, ewe lambs every year from conventional sources, okay? Those 5 things are key, all right? Next thing then, you need to assess the market. What are your options? Look, is there a market for what I'm going to produce there? Are there processors around? Well, there are. Basically, there are processors. There's 2 for beef and 1 for sheep, okay? Other farmers there do direct sales. Now, this is probably more applicable to the horse side of the house, okay? But yes, there may be people on the call that are thinking about going down the horse route. So look, yeah, the people do box sales, fine, and sell direct from their house, from their premises. Other organic farmers, then, farm to farm sales are relatively big thing enough in organics. Okay, there's classified ads up on IOA and Organic Trust have classifieds up on their websites. And the last thing here is farmer-led organised groups. An example of that would be the Little Milk Company down in Cork. It's a group of 12 or 14 dairy farmers that got together, and they're producing an organic cheese and marketing it themselves and selling it. Okay, if you're still on board at this stage, you're at step 4 now, and you want to go ahead. So next thing then is the Department of Agriculture have nominated these 2 private bodies, IOA, Irish Organic Farmers Association, and Organic Trust. These are the people, as I said earlier, that will be out inspecting you every year, okay? So you have to sign up to one of these guys, okay? So that's the next thing. So you have to do what's known as a conversion plan. So that's just a plan that you document how you're going to survive organically. That's submitted. And if they're happy with what's in that plan, then they give you an organic license. And then at that stage, you're up and running as a registered organic farmer, okay? So these are the certification bodies are people that will inspect you once a year, and you have to do records and all the rest of it. Okay. The next step there is do your 25-hour course on organic production. Look, I'll talk about that in a minute. I'm just going to quickly run through that one because it comes up again on the OFS. Just to be aware there are organic support schemes there. The organic farming scheme is there. Okay, this one we'll talk about later. Okay, it's the one where our organic farmers get a check in the post every year. There is this organic capital investment scheme as part of TAMS. So organic farmers get grants on, say, tedders, mowers, front loaders, polytunnels, whatever it is that's applicable to organics, you get granted on that. And lastly, there is some grant aid there for organic processors. That's off farm, so we won't spend time with that. Okay, so basically, once you have your certification, your conversion plan done and submitted to the certification body, then you have an organic license and you're up and running as an organic farmer. So for the first 2 years, once you join organics, you're what's known as what's in conversion. Your farm is being converted from conventional to fully organic. So that takes 2 years in a livestock system. So you won't be able to sell any produce there or any stock off that farm as fully organic till the 3rd year, till you kick into the 3rd year of the scheme. So it takes, your 2 full years completed before you can sell any stock as fully organic. All right. Anyone here that's on the call there that might have a bit of a horticulture or arable, only crops sown after the conversion period has elapsed will ever achieve full organic status. Okay, that's just to note that. What's about the future of organics? Look, this is a development body that was put together by the government there, and the plan, or this group of people are a group of stakeholders in organics, and they have a development plan put in place for organics. Okay, the prospects for funding for organics looks good in terms of CAP, and look, the market is growing year on year. So look, I wouldn't have any worry about the organic market collapsing. That's not going to happen. Right. Okay. So that's a little bit. So what I've done at the moment is a bit of background information about organics. The last few slides there was about steps to becoming an organic farmer, and the next thing then is about the organic farming scheme itself. Okay, the one that was just announced there a few weeks ago. Okay, so look, the scheme opened on the 1st of March 2021, and it closes on the 30th of April. So the window is quite tight here. Okay, budget of 4 million. And the department expect to get somewhere between 400 and 500 farmers into it. Okay, think back to 15, they got about 500 in as well. Back in 2018, they let in about 60. All right, so there was only 1 million there for that. Okay, or less than half a million. Sorry. Now, the next thing is to be eligible to join the OFS. So, having registered as an organic operator with the certification body, a person then can apply to the Department of Agriculture to join the OFS. So, once you have your conversion plan done, submit it to the certification body, and you're a registered organic farmer, the certification body notify the Department of Ag that you are now up and running. And it's only at that stage then when you go into your ag food account, that OFS tab becomes active, and then you can go in and apply. Okay. So if you go into it today and you're not an organic farmer, it just does nothing. It's just there. Okay. So once you're a registered organic farmer, you can apply for the OFS. It's all done through ag food. Okay. Few quick words there on the minimum organic area is 3 hectares. You can't go with less than 3 hectares, okay? And if you're a hort person there, you need at least a hectare, okay? A little bit of probably a downer on this scheme is that there is ranking and selection on this year, okay? So you have to get a minimum ranking of 25 points if ranking and selection comes into play. So in the event, let's just say 600 people apply for the scheme, then ranking and selection will come into play. If only 300 people apply, then ranking selection won't come into play because there's enough money for everybody, okay? But look, 25 marks is a cutoff there. So look, every farmer won't have a problem reaching 25 marks. Right, the next thing is about this organic course. I just clicked on it there a few screens ago, but look, you have to complete this organic farming course, all right? So that has to be done. It's a 25-hour course. So before pre-COVID days, it used to take 4 days, okay, in the office, and two farm visits involved. Has to be if you haven't it done, you have to have it done by the 1st of April 2022 and upload it on their system. So you have a year to do it, basically. All right, okay. If you have it done, then that's fine. You've got a cert and you just upload that, okay. There is a waiting list there, okay. So if you go into the Teagasc website and click on rural economy and click on organics and click on training, you will see there's an email address there to send off your name and your address and your enterprise. You send off that email, it's organiccourses@teagasc.ie is the email address, and just give your name and address and your enterprise, and you're going on a waiting list. Okay. Now there are other people doing them, like the NOTS people in Drumshanbo do them as well. Okay. So we're not the only ones that have it. Okay. Right. The other thing here is in terms of ranking and selection. I just wanted this is important here. Okay. They have priority groups. So the first priority group that they have is people that applied way back in 2018 but were unsuccessful and continue to farm organically in 2019 and 2020. They're going to get extra points. Okay. So they're a priority group. Young farmers are going to get anyone that's 40 years and under is getting extra points. So there's extra marks for horticulture, for dairy, and for cereal and that kind of stuff there as well. Okay, so that's what's known as a sectoral balance across the various enterprises. Okay, they get extra points there. Dry stock is quite poor, but whereas dairy gets more points and cereals get more points. So that's why we're saying to people, if you are a dry stock farmer, there is an incentive there to plant up to 3 hectares of cereals. Okay. The next group that get priority group is total conversion versus partial conversion. So total conversion means if you're putting all the farm in, so a person that's putting all the farm in gets more points than a person that's only putting part of it in. The larger your area of ground is that you're putting in, the more points you get. And lastly, there's extra points for guys that have arable and forage. Okay. Another thing to remember there about OFS in 2021, there's 2 separate applications we need to do. Okay, so there's 3 steps in this thing. All right, the first step was conversion plan, off the certification body, and get an organic license. That's the first step. Okay, the next step then is to apply for the OFS itself to ag food. Okay, so that's a separate application in its own right. You have to go into ag food, click on the OFS tab, and go through the screens that are there. The next thing that you must do as well is in your 2021, this year's BPS form, if you have any inkling that you'll go down the organic route, there is a little tab that you have to click there that I intend to go organic farming. You must click that and go through all the screens on that as well. But that's important. Those two things are quite important, right? So apply for OFS and click on your BPS application, click the tab that I intend to farm organically in 2021 and fill out those screens that'll appear as a result of that. Look, this is a link here. If you want to go into the Department of Ag, you can see all the terms and conditions and all the rest of it that's attached with the farming scheme, the organic scheme there in Department of Ag website. Okay. These are the payment rates. I don't know if anyone on the call here that's hort person. Basically, guys that have less than 6 hectares are getting €300 there a hectare and 200. Okay. If it's over 6 and between 6 and 60, it's 200 and 170. Tillage guys, look, again, if you have less than 20, it's 260 and 170. And if you have between 20 and 60, it's 220 and 170. And so this is for the mulch for 98% of you that are on the call here. The payment is 220 for the first 2 years and then 170 for every year thereafter. Okay, so for the first 2 years, the reason it's higher is because you're in conversion. You can't sell any produce as organic. And it's only in the 3rd year then that you're fully organic, you get and that's why it drops. Okay. Just 2 or 3 other things to be aware of there. There is a minimum stocking rate there of a half a livestock unit per hectare that you have to get the full payment. Now, if you don't have that half a livestock unit and say you've only half it, say you've only 0.25, then you only get half the organic farm, the OFS payment. Okay. So if you have 80% of it, you just get 80% of the payment. All right. But that's important to know. Ranking and selection criteria. I just have a screen later on that I just want to look at in more detail. Just be aware there is an interaction there between GLAS and OFS. All right. So some area-based actions, things like hay meadow, lip, those kind of things, wild bird cover, you won't get double payment on the same piece of ground. They'll pay you the GLAS, but they won't pay the OFS on it, all right? So you only get one payment on any one particular piece of ground. So that's, just be aware of that, okay? So there is a bit of a conflict there. And look, if you're interested in red clover, there's a small bit of money available for it as well, okay? So this is the ranking and selection for this year, okay? I don't know where I'm at with time here, but look, this, as I said to you, guys that joined in 20, you can look at it yourselves. It's basically you work your way through the table. If you were a guy that tried YFS in 2018, weren't successful, but you stuck with organics and you're applying now again, you get 60 marks. Young farmers less than 41 on the date they apply, you get 40 marks. And you can see here that horticultural, cereals, if you have any bit of cereals at all, you're getting higher marks than just your ordinary beef and sheep. They only get 10 marks. You only get one count. You only can count one out of this column here. Okay, so you can see dairy gets 100. Cereals only gets say a beef guy with cereals gets 50. Hort gets 100. Again, you see here in terms of the conversion, 100% converted 10 marks. If you're going to go 50 convert, you get 5 marks. If you're going to 20% convert, you get 2 marks. Okay. In terms of area, 70 marks for 50 hectares, 50. So 50 is a max, okay? So basically you can see the larger your farm is, the more marks you get. and a mixed. So if you have mixed farm with arable and forage, you get 30 marks there. Okay. Look, 25 is the minimum. So look, if you just don't decide to do it, you're just an ordinary beef farmer, you get 10 marks for being a beef farmer. You might get 10 marks then for putting all the farm in. And look, you'll probably get a few marks then again for whatever number. Let's just say you have 20 hectares, you get another 20 marks. So look, 25 isn't hard to get. But we would be saying to people to boost your chances in the event that it is oversubscribed. And if you can do it, it is a runner for maybe people in the south of the county and parts of Longford. If you can have access to if you're in an area where a bit of tillage is grown, a bit of cereals, I would be strongly advised to put in 3 hectares there. Okay. Okay, that's me finished the mental race. Yeah, how many minutes have I? Okay, that's
sorry.
look,
I was just reminding you just a minute. That's fine.
Okay, well, look, this is the last screen I want to show to people here. Look, if you go into our website there, teagasc.ie, and click on rural economy, and it'll show you then a drop down on the right hand side, and there's organics. The tab for organics is there. There's a lot of more information inside on the Teagasc public website there if you want to see it. All right. Okay. Thanking you. I'm going to leave it there. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing there, Emer. All right. Okay.
Yeah, that's perfect. If you can stop sharing there, thanks a million. Jerry, if you're there, if you want to maybe put on your camera and start sharing your screen.
So just essentially what I'm going to do is just give a rundown on the basic payment scheme for 2021. Listen, we're filling this for years and years and years, and I just highlight maybe the changes, and I'm just conscious of the time that we'll run through as much and give you as much practical information as we possibly can, and see how we get on. I suppose the first thing, just to give an overview of what I'm going to do, simply I'll outline the basic payment rules for this year, 2021, and highlight maybe any significant changes in it. The key dates for the closing dates and payment dates I'll cover. The new mapping system in Roscommon, and this is particularly important for listeners or viewers in the Roscommon area, and what are the key areas in it that you need to look out for. I suppose the area of natural constraints, or the old headages as it is known, paid by the Irish government here, again, there are a few subtle changes in that we need to be aware of. Transfer of entitlement applications are similar to last year, only that I'll highlight maybe some of the issues that need to be sorted out that caused problems last year. The Young Farmer Scheme, again, I'll cover that, and land eligibility concerns. And I think that's one of the most important things, maybe towards the end of the presentation, just to see in terms of, what land are issues in relation to land eligibility, particularly given the new maps and that. And then I'll just summarize just a few key points at the end. Okay, so everyone got their BPS envelope maybe there about 3 weeks ago. What you do with it? Okay, so I suppose, in the BPS envelope, I know that's the example of the one at home. There's 10 to 18 pages, depending on the number of maps and everything else. So there's a lot of information in a big white envelope. And the majority of people, I would say, opened it, closed it, put it back on the table, file it safely in a big drawer where I don't need to see it again. And I wonder how many people actually went through the map, scrutinized the form, and went through it and see what's going on. So by and large, a lot of people just ring the advisor and they'll deal with it, and it's left that way. Okay, so just fast forward to October 2021, postman coming around about middle of October, and we're all expecting a few pounds to come in, and all of a sudden there's no money coming in because there was some problem with a map or an issue or something like that, and then it's a case of starting to blame the advisor. So let's rewind a little bit. So between now and sort of the end of the month, what I'm saying to most people is that, take out this envelope, look at what's in it. On the left-hand side, you have 2 explanation leaflets on it. It's just simplified the BPS and the ANC for this year. Just the main rules and conditions. I'll go through them here, but again, there's an option there just to go through them, and it's very simple to go through. The other thing is the maps, and I'll cover that in a few minutes in relation to Roscommon, in particular the maps and the changes that's happened on that. And then you have the actual list of parcels itself. And again, just to go through those parcels and see how the areas have changed is important. All right. The other 2 timely reminders is obviously from a safety point of view, the department put it in is in terms of retagging those, or tagging calves and having the cow the other side of the gate, and a little bit on tractors. And the other thing which is becoming more prevalent and more important, is relation to runoffs into water courses, and the whole pesticide management side of things is mentioned in it as well. So it's a big envelope of stuff. A lot of people have filed it away and not look at it. The main thing is to take it out and start doing something about it. Okay, so the key closing dates for the application, obviously Monday, its closing date is the 7th of February. Normally around the 15th of May, we have it in our heads, but it's Monday the 17th this year at midnight. Closing date for the transfer of entitlements, the very same. So if you're transferring entitlements, leasing in or leasing out or selling, you need to have that done by the 17th of May. So the basic rule stays the same. Land must be held from the 1st of January to the 1st of June, or from the 31st of May to December 31st. And ultimately, the person that can claim on it is this important date of the 31st of May. So if you're actually farming, who's farming on the 31st of May is the key date. If you're planting land or putting it into forestry, if it isn't planted before the 31st of May, you know, it can be included for grazing this year, or included on your areated grazing ground. If not, if it's planted before that, well, then ultimately it's down as a forestry plot. Similarly with new roads, a lot of new roads going in around about the county this year. And if a lot of that land is fenced off, but it's actually available to graze, and if it's not moved in on before the 31st of May, you're entitled to graze it. Okay, so preliminary checks, a very important date to bear in mind, all right, and it's something to take note of. You know, you're in the middle of the silage season, you're under pressure and everything else, trying to get grass gathered up and everything else. But there isn't an opportunity where the department write back. Well, in this case, they send an email or they send a text or send a notification to your advisor. But and it's a preliminary check that if there's any issue that they see outstanding, there's an opportunity to rectify that without penalty up to at the 10th of June or around that time. So that's a very important date to bear in mind for people, you know, that if you're concerned about anything, if you lost land, or if you missed out on ground, or you feel that you overclaimed for some reason or other, or there's an issue about land, well, you can rectify it up to around the 10th of June. Then in terms of the good news, the advance payment is issued on the 16th of October 21, and the balance in payment then as normal in the first week in December. Okay, so just to highlight, this is quite important for people in Roscommon. There are 9 counties that were identified. Sligo, Mayo, Roscommon is the 3 western counties in it. Longford, as far as I know, is not one of the 9 counties. I think it's Laois and Carlow, and I think there's 2 others, Dublin and Kildare, I think, as well. So what difference does that make? So essentially what they've done is they've gone over all the maps with new satellite imagery and adjusted down or adjusted up maps based on what they've seen on the ground, based on the imagery from 19 and part of 18. So there's better satellite imagery out there, and that's something to bear in mind going forward, that's improving every year. And certainly with the new cap coming down the tracks, they certainly have, you know, greater availability of satellite imagery. Again, this is going to give us more accurate maps, and you can see that on the maps that was issued to you, that they're definitely keener in terms of what they're spotting, in terms of what's on the ground and eligible or eligible. Now, so for everyone on the call, you've got those maps, particularly the Roscommon people. It's very important to go down and have a quick look over that this year and just look at the areas that shaded. There are areas shaded in yellow and blue on the maps. And these are highlighting the changes that have taken place on the maps, or what the department have changed on it. So it's important to look at those areas and see about the exclusions on those. So the other side of that is that there's both increases as well as reductions. So with the help of your advisor, if you need to adjust that up or down, it's very important to look at that, particularly the ones that's needed to be adjusted up. Maybe there's an option to do that. And so some of these applications, maybe where you tick the box that the maps are the same as previous years, maybe it's important to take a few minutes just to go through the maps and check that. And the other thing is that just to check the exclusions and see if what they are excluding is right. And as I said there, the transformed up parcels need to be increased. Okay, so that's just a simple map that's there. You can see yourself there's a yellow section on it, and that's been looked at again, and it has been excluded or reduced down by some percentage. There's also yellow marks on it there where the roads are excluded on that. And again, you can see the town land, you can see the list, and then there's a list of 5 or 6 exclusions. You can go through those. There's 3 farm roads on it, ineligible, and a scrub on it. And it's a matter of actually just identifying if that's right and correct. And if not, you can adjust it up or down when you're doing the online application. Okay, so that's on the maps, and finish the maps. So have a look at those, see where you're going, and make sure that what you're putting down is fairly accurate. Again, a lot of this, not, you know, with COVID and everything, this year offices will be closed, so this will be done over the phone. So there's a bigger onus on yourselves as farmers to maybe look through that and see. It's very difficult in looking into a computer to see what's actually happening on the ground. So that's one thing you can do between now and the end of the month, is actually to go and look at that. And the night before you're talking to your advisor on it, make sure you sort of have a run over the maps. Just on ANC, which is the old sort of headage that you know it as, is paid by the Irish government as distinct from the EU bank. So BPS on ANC is included. The ANC application is included on. It's a matter of ticking the box on the BPS form. We're used to that already. So just when your advisor has it filled out and sends you out a copy of your BPS, just check that the box for ANC is ticked. Listen, we all need to do the best we can and everything else, and just in case it's an oversight or overlooked, just to make sure that that box is ticked. It's essentially paid on disadvantaged area land. So all the land in Roscommon and Longford is essentially included in it, and so what do you call it? It's available, and those rate of payments have gone up. I think one thing that there's always confusion over is just to remember the minimum stocking rate. We spend a lot of the year calculating this out for farmers, is the minimum stocking rate, which is 0.15 livestock units per hectare. But more importantly, for those that maybe aren't keeping cattle all year round, you know, that's in a store system or in a dry cattle system, is that for 7 consecutive months you have to have double that 0.3 livestock units per hectare. And just a point to note is that it's not 28 weeks, it's for 31 weeks. So that's very important, that some people get caught on that. You need the 0.31 livestock units for 31 weeks, not 7 months. If you do your calculation, 7 4 is 28 weeks. It's for the 31 weeks we need it for. Okay. And that's obviously where someone opts for having no cattle for the winter months or whatever. Just to do an example on that, so a 20 hectare farm, 50 acres at a stocking rate for 31 weeks is that if you take your 0.3 livestock units per hectare multiplied by your 20 hectares, that's essentially giving you 6 livestock units is the minimum stocking rate. And that equates to 6 cattle over 2-year-old or 10 stores. 10 by 0.6 to give you 2 stores of cattle that's under. That can be stores or calves, can be buckle rare calves if you want, but it's cattle that's under 2-year-old. Okay. The donkey rule was used by, you know, the people at lower intensity and sort of to draw payments in the past. Again, the donkey rule changed last year in that only half your stocking rate can be made up by donkey units as such. So the important thing on that is that 50% must be from a donkey and 50% from cattle or sheep. Okay. Applicants with sheep and goats, how they calculate that is based on the sheep census, and it's very important that was completed so that your stock can be counted for stocking rate purposes. 2 things that often catch people, and obviously, you know, I see the TB and the things is more prevalent the last and more outbreaks the last year than all around the country, I think, rather than what's happened in the past. So you must have a minimum. You must have your minimum stock within 10 days of being restricted or de-restricted. So as soon as you get clear, you have 10 days from that date to get up to your minimum stocking rate again. The other thing is, so similarly for new entrants or people that receive a new herd number, maybe haven't got it and appeal under or apply under a reference number. Again, they must be at the stocking rate within 10 days, the minimum stocking rate within 10 days of receiving their new herd number. Okay, the young farmer scheme will just, there's no real change on this. You know, obviously it's open again to people. Payment is 25% of the national average BPS, so depending on, it varies from year to year, but it's based on 25% of what the national average is. The young farmer must demonstrate. Now, why I particularly want to highlight this is that there was a number of inspections on the young farmer scheme this year, and there are going to be more next year, on the year ahead as well. So, and it's a 5-year scheme by and large for people if they have the opportunity to be in for 5 years. So it's important that any young farmers on the webinar realize the significance of these inspections. Okay, so just to cover who's eligible to apply this year, it's anyone with a BPS application that's aged under 40 years at the date of application. That's quite important. It's the date of application that's important. So if you're heading for 40, get your application in a bit earlier. And then FETAC level 6 accredited course and set up with a herd number. And obviously that doesn't necessarily need to be on our own. It could be in a shared position with a partnership or joint herd numbers or a joint venture. And I just have that warning there. There was a compliance check of 10% last year. So there was 10% last year on inspections, and again 10% this year. They're via video calls, and the transactions are through. You have to verify that you're managing the farm, obviously had adequate knowledge on the enterprise itself, but more importantly then on the financial side of things, you have to display your transactions through the bank account, sales and purchases. You must have sales and purchases, and you must also have the payments showing that the young farmer is actually in control of that. Some people have fallen down on that, and it's a big amount of money to pay back that if you've drawn it over the 5 years. Okay, just moving on to transfer of entitlements and where we stand with it this year. So the closing date, again, similar, is the 17th of May. The whole COVID situation in terms of signing forms and bringing people into offices and trying to avoid the risk of the transfer of the viruses, and with the numbers going up again or staying static as they are, offices won't be open again. So we need a lot of help in terms of getting this done. So obviously your confirmation signatures of the transfer and entitlements is the difficult thing. So it's getting those done and getting them organised caused problems last year. And I suppose there was a bit of tolerance from the department in that regard to deal with that. But we need help with that and getting those forms in and getting them signed and back in straight away if we can, and get them uploaded to the department. Okay, ensure you don't lose entitlements with non-use rules. So if you have entitlements there, if you haven't used them for 2 years, well, then you're going to lose them. So if you have small percentage of entitlement, most people are using most of their entitlements, but if there's a small amount of entitlements that's not being used, you're as well lease them out if it comes to it, even if they're small, to keep them, to hold on to them. Opportunities to increase payments by leasing entitlements, and this is obviously if you have spare acres or spare hectares on your farm, why would you not avail of those extra payments if you can by leasing in entitlements? A lot of the guys I've been dealing with would have done that over the years, and otherwise, even increasing the value of their entitlements. If you have very low value entitlements, even leasing them out and taking high value entitlements is possibly an option as well. Change one big area, and I suppose if there's people on the call that's getting on in years, maybe suffering a bit in health and everything else, I suppose one thing that we should highlight is that it's quite important sometimes to add a person to the herd number, so that in a husband and wife team, if it's the wife that's farming or the husband that has the name in the herd number, if anything happens to that person, or if they were to pass away, everything is frozen until probate is taken out. So in those situations, we sort of recommend putting both names in the herd numbers, and then if anything happens, any of the partners in the situation, well, then the money is freed up. You get your money as normal. If you don't, the situations I've seen this year is that you won't get money before the end of the year, and it's even at the earliest, it'll be well into the middle of next year before you have your money freed up. So that's very important. The clawback, again, in terms of selling entitlements and talking to the auctioneers, there's a limited number of entitlements for sale, people getting out or transferring out. There's a 20% clawback from the department on those entitlements that's sold without land, and also there's a capital gains on some of them at 33%. So that prohibits an awful lot of people, farmers, from selling, because you're losing 55% of your or 53% of your entitlements. However, there's entrepreneur relief that can be gained on it by some farmers, so that would reduce down your capital gains. So you might only be talking, 20 to 32% of a clawback. So there is limited number of that available at the moment. Okay. No, just on the transfer of entitlements, just in terms of the auctioneers, that was pointed out to me today by Joan Octon, was that an awful lot of the entitlements, even though they're set up in the Teagasc system or by the private planners, in terms of that we nominate or facilitate the setting up the auctioneers for the transfer of the entitlements, it doesn't appear in their system. So it's very important, if you're transferring entitlements or transferring entitlements out, that the farmer directly contacts the auctioneer. So just bear that in mind. I'll just repeat that again. So if you're transferring entitlements in or out, it's very important that the farmer contacts the auctioneer directly. There's a whole lot of problems with COVID last year without that happening, and that's something to bear in mind if you're transferring entitlements. Okay, just the last few slides I want to show, and I'm just conscious of time again, and just to allow a bit of time for questions, it's just in relation to this whole area of we're stuck inside in an office. You're outside on the ground, you're farming this land every day. The case is that you need to take cognizance of the fact that some of this land, any land that's ineligible, that you highlighted and get and reduce it now. So just these two plots, for instance, behind the gate there in the first picture, that land isn't being farmed, it's sort of abandoned. You see little pockets of this around yards and places. If there are those pockets, make sure they're reduced down or put down as a zero value on the BPS. Again, similarly on this land, if that got an inspection, that land is ineligible again. Okay, and that's, inspected is by a satellite imagery rather than a person walking it on the ground. Okay, ineligible features, are typical enough. Like guys be chancing these in a bit at times. So obviously the ferns or bracken on the left hand side on a mountain parcel, you know, where there's a big outcrop and there's no grass available under that bracken. Bracken obviously is not a crop that can be grazed. If it's sparse and if it hasn't gone to that level, obviously it is available. But if it's grown like that, it's a big issue and it is ineligible. Similarly, on the right hand side, there's a marsh or a wetland, again where cattle aren't grazing, and again that's ineligible. And natural enough, most guys know that rivers and roads are sort of excluded at this stage, just to make sure if there's any new farm roads put in or that they're reduced down. Ineligible features also include sort of the lake shores, rocky shorelines, and rocky outcrops. They're ineligible features as well. So just if you have those on the farm, just to be conscious of reducing down your area somewhat. Okay. Again, land eligibility deductions, you know, where you need to take a deduction in place. The top right-hand photo, you can see that there's a bit of scrub, you know, low intensity farming, probably an older person, not farming as intensely as it did, low stocking rate, a lot of encroachment of blackthorn and briars and stuff. Again, a deduction has to be taken for that. Very difficult to see that in an office. You know, only someone on the ground can sort of allow for that. The bracken one we covered already. Secondly, then is this rushes or high rushes, or where people aren't sort of looking after rushes. You know, it's not, there's a percentage reduction on each of those parcels where there's high rushes, and there's the inspector there showing his arms out with the height of the rushes. You know, that's the sort of rushes that they're penalising and reducing down an area. Obviously, it's quite, with the machinery that's around now with weed lickers, and also with the availability of mulchers the last while for stronger scrub, like there's no excuse why these parcels can't be tidied up with a bit of, but it'll cost a few pounds just to do it. The other thing is that you know, the parcel on the right hand side, again, you know, where there's hedges coming out on the field or coming out, encroaching out on the field, and it's happened over time, they're spreading each year, just to be conscious of getting those tightened up or cleaned up if it needs be. And on this one, on the right hand side, you can sort of see that, you know, one side of that there's a drain there. There's a lot of keep on this side is bog, it's not being grazed, whereas on the other side it is being grazed. Okay. Then, of course, this spring has caused a big issue in certain counties in relation to burning of vegetation or uncontrolled burning of vegetation between the 1st of March and 1st of August. A lot of publicity about it and heavy penalties coming down the line for anyone that burned that land, leaving it ineligible, and further penalties with it. So there's no issue in relation to controlled burning at certain times of the year, so long as it's controlled, and that's the case on the left-hand side there. Okay, so just a summary again, and just that we'll leave it a few minutes for questions. So check your BPS maps and entitlements. You know, that's the first thing. Sit down this evening or between now and the end of the month and just have a look through and see if there's any issues that you need to look at and target. Don't just accept it's the same as every year, because in Roscommon the maps have changed. Identify those features eligible. Check shaded areas, and is there work you need to do to improve your area? Okay, check them. The MEA area on the form, and see if you're under claiming or over claiming. So just on those, particularly on those transform maps, those maps in Roscommon which are shaded, just to make sure that you make sure that the MEA is right on it. Decide if you need to transfer entitlements in and out, and act now. So obviously the higher value entitlements, you know, will be snapped up first. So if you're looking for them, try and get on and move on that earlier. Where you're leasing out entitlements, the farmer has to contact the auctioneer directly. I've mentioned that and stressed it before, so that's very important. And be careful of the ANC stocking rates. If you're working the 7-month rule, it's 31 weeks that you need to work with. If an advisor fills your application, check the copy posted out to you. Just don't assume that everything is right with them. You know, 99% of them will be right, but there'll be an odd one that there'll be a slip made or whatever. So just to be conscious of that, we're all human. And the other thing, if you have an option to use your preliminary checks option to solve problems without penalties, that's the early June. You have that option. You know, if you feel that you've overclaimed or there's an issue with something or you've lost a piece of ground, don't chance it. You can get it remedied without and the department will actually write out, well, they'll actually notify them. I don't think they wrote out last year, they actually sent them to to the planners, or if you applied online yourself, they were sent directly to your own email address. So just to be careful, just to look at those. And I suppose the final bit of advice I'd give is don't overclaim. It's easier and not to receive the money than to pay it back with interest. So I suppose if you're not sure and you feel that it's borderline whether you should put it in or not, err on the side of caution, because at the end of the day, when you don't receive the money, if you have to go paying back this money, people get very sore about it. Okay, that concludes me, Emer.
That's brilliant, Jerry. Thanks a million. If you want to stop sharing the screen there.
Yeah.
I'll just go to gallery view. Now, as is the case with schemes, there's plenty of questions flooding in. So I'll hand you over to Conor, who's going to ask the questions.
You're on mute, Conor, there.
You're muted.
Sorry, thanks, Emer. There's a good few questions in there. I might just start with Enda in relation to a conversion plan for going into organic. Just what's the procedure involved with it, or what does it entail?
Right. So basically, it's just really an essay that you're writing. Okay, when you apply to, say, the certification body, they'll send you out a whole pack. Or it's up online as well. You can see it online. So basically, it's sort of a template there that you follow, and it's relatively simple. The first part of the conversion plan talks historically what happened on the farm. Okay, so that's the first part of the conversion plan. Then you're looking at how you're going to manage in the future organically. How are you going to grow enough grass? How are you going to manage veterinary treatments? How are you going to look after the housing? How are you going to manage soil fertility? And the other things you need to send off then are things like soil samples. Okay, now soil samples, as long as we're taken in the previous 5 years, they're fine. You need a yard sketch and a map of the holding, and a fee of about €370, I think, is a fee for this half year or the course of year term as such. All right, okay. So that's it. Look, people shouldn't get too excited or get too nervous about it. Look, it's simply you just write an essay type thing. Just the headings are there for you. Just follow the headings. And if you want, I have a template there that I can give, it's not a template, but a sample plan that I can give out to people, and they can just follow it. You know, it's not. It doesn't have to be a very complicated, long-winded document. You know, 2-3 pages will do fine and get you over the line. Just follow the headings that are in the document, and you'll be fine. Yeah.
Okay, so then continuing on from that, if you get accepted by the certification body and you are successful in the organic scheme, how do you enroll for the course with Teagasc, the organic course?
In terms of the course there, yeah, look, there is, what I would advise people to do there is to go in on our public website, the Teagasc website there, and click on the rural economy tab, and that will bring you into the organic. You'll see the organics tab will be on the right hand side there, and click. Then once you get into organics screen there is a tab for training, and it gives you the email address that you have to email off to that address your intention that you want to do this course. And the thing they're looking for there is your name, your address, your phone number, and the enterprise type that you have. And so look, it needs to be your own email address used, because they'll notify you then when the actual course is on as such. Okay. So you email off to that address using your own email, your details, and then they email you back when the course is going to be on. Now, hopefully when this COVID thing has relaxed things, we might be able to do them in person, but failing that, they probably will be done virtually. Okay.
Just another comment about someone who's probably thinking of going into organic. Are there grants to build organic compatible sheds?
Look, the grants that are there are the same through TAMS. It's just that organic farmers have a whole section in TAMS to themselves, that Organic Capital Investment Scheme. Look, you can apply through the OCIS or just the animal welfare tab. Look, it's exactly the same as for buildings. It's 40% grant aid, or 60% if you're a young farmer. You're an eligible young farmer, you get 60%. It's just everything is done through TAMS. There are grants there, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, and another one here, if you're in the organic scheme and you're going along and then you find it's not for you, what happens? Is there a clawback on money paid?
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. Let's just say you have 2 years done organics and you just get paid off with a whole lot. Look, yeah, and you have 2 years money drawn. It is a 5-year commitment. Yeah, you will have to stick with it for 5 years, okay? So just be aware of that. Yeah, there is clawback. Yeah.
And then there's a kind of a general question here about someone who's a beef finisher. Would they get into the scheme? I suppose.
Yeah, well, sure. Beef finishers. Look, look. What I'd advise anyone that's thinking about going into this thing is take a look at that ranking and selection table that's there. Look, it's like gazing into a crystal ball. We just don't know. Like the ranking selection won't come into play whatsoever if the thing isn't oversubscribed. If it is, then that will come into play. So what I would be saying to people, just to negate any possibility of or maybe the possibility to get as many points as possible, that if you're in an area where there's a bit of tillage and you have access to guys that have combines and all that kind of stuff, I would strongly recommend that a person puts in at least 3 hectares of oats, spring oats, or some sort of cereal crop, just to get those extra points that are available, okay, to build up your points. So the only downside of that, of course, is if you do choose that, you have to stick with it for the 5 years, okay? Yeah, I would be recommending people. Yeah, look, I can't you can't guarantee anything to anybody. It all depends if the scheme is oversubscribed or not. If it's not oversubscribed, everybody gets in. If it's undersubscribed, everybody gets in. If it's oversubscribed, then ranking and selection will come in, and then they'll start going through that table and totting up your points.
Okay, and just a technical one here. If you're sowing organic oats in a field with grass and rushes, how do you get rid of the grass before minimum cultivation?
For oats, is it? So basically, all you can do is look
into a grass.
So look, yeah, it's well, you obviously can't use any sprays. So look, what the advice is in terms of reseeding or any kind of tillage operation is that you shallow plow, and you use your lime, and you get your apply as much P and K as you can. There are sources of organic P and K that you can apply. Okay, ideally you could plow in some well rotted in farm manure as well into the sward, but shallow plow it. Don't deep plow it, because if you're going to deep plow it, you're going to bury your fertility. So like we're talking about plowing maybe at 4 or 5 inches, okay, whereas the normal one's about 8 or 9 inches, okay. Look, we don't have access to chemicals, okay. So that's one way of doing it. Yeah, it's probably the best way of doing it. Okay.
Okay. And should we move to Jerry now? Just for instance, if you're putting in farm roadways, Jerry, after the 1st of June, do you have to take it away from your BPS?
No, the 31st of May, you're clear. If it's on the 31st of May, you can use the 1st of January to the 31st of May or the 1st of June, you're okay. So there's no issue with that. Obviously you have to come out next year.
Okay, that's all right. And if you make an amendment to your maps, will the Department of Agriculture accept it, or will they come and inspect it?
Not at all. So the whole idea of sending out the maps every year and up to the 17th of May is to give you the opportunity to reduce down your area if it needs to be reduced down. And even after that, you can make an amendment up to the 31st of May. And even beyond that, so long as you haven't got notification of an inspection or or a satellite inspection, you can still, if you feel that you made an error or that you overclaimed, you can always reduce down and notify them, so long as they haven't identified it first, without a penalty.
Okay. And there's another question here. If I remove a short ditch to put in a gateway, will that affect the eligibility?
So to remove a short ditch to so what they want is to maintain these ditches and land features, and yeah, it's not a big issue now. It's only, what is it? It depends on the size of the gateway, but 10 or 15 yards is not going to make that much difference. Yeah, 25 meters, there's no issue with it, like.
Yeah. Okay.
No issue with that. Just to cover that hedges and drains are eligible features on the maps, and obviously with the new cap coming in down the road, it'll be 2 years' time before it comes in as 2023. All those features, it could become more significant in terms of payment, because there'd be more money paid from an environmental perspective on the BPS and Pillar 1.
Okay. And you were talking about the new maps that have come out, and some areas been slightly redigitized. If an area in a parcel increases, does it automatically increase for the applicant, or does the applicant have to do anything?
No, that's the important point I was saying about parcels that's transformed up. So the department, if they increase the area of the MEA, they're not going to increase the claimed area. They're going to leave it to the farmer or the advisor or the planner to actually increase the area up themselves. So that's why I say it's very important to look at those maps and just go through them. So there are parcels that's going to lose out, and there are parcels that's going to increase marginally by and large. But just make sure you check them. And if your claimed area is less than your MEA area, well then, and you feel it's a clean field, well then you should up your claimed area to your MEA area.
Okay. And just someone made a comment, they have looked at their maps already and they'd found a couple of fields missing, so it can happen. And I've seen cases as well for some forestry parcels are missing off the BPS. So just bear that in mind when you are going doing your applications.
Yeah.
So we're nearly finished.
Yeah,
with
I
the
think
questions.
just on the
Sorry, go on, Jerry.
sorry, Conor, just on the photograph there, obviously there's a list of parcels on your list of maps, and there's a list of parcels in the envelope. And just to make sure that, even if you have a copy of last year, just to compare it to it, it's very difficult in the office, to sort of, to be sure and make sure that's done. It's easy to miss a parcel if it isn't on pre-printed form. If it's left out of the pre-printed form, though, you have a case with the department that was overlooked on their behalf, so it can be resolved. But it's better to have it added in and to save delays and payments later on.
And just one final question for Enda. Will the organic scheme open again in 22 or 23?
Well, look, we don't know as such, but I'd be hopeful enough that it will open, if not next year. But because we've got the Greens in power, I think they're really strong and strongly behind the organic movement and organics in general. So I would be hopeful enough that it'll open, if not next year, the year after. Yeah. Because look, the whole push on an EU level is to get more and more land organic. Okay. So I would be hopeful. Look, there's no guarantee; it's just an opinion, but I would be hopeful enough that it will open again. Relatively shortly again.
Can I just make a comment there, Conor? Or
yeah, work away. Yeah,
just on the gloss to point out the fact that anyone look for an extension, you have an opportunity to stay with your extension, the gloss, or get out of it if you feel that you haven't completed the jobs that's to be done on it. And you have until the BPS is applied on, which is the 17th of May, to do that. So if you wish to go ahead with gloss and you haven't already contacted them, there's a couple of hundred in the country as far as I know, you can still write a note to say that you want to extend it. And the department have written 4 or 5 letters or 3 letters, I think, on that case already. So most of those people might be tied up, or it could be COVID related or whatever, or nursing homes or whatever. Or secondly, I think people that are in it are not comfortable in that they haven't completed all the work and that there could be a possible clawback or claim back on it. You have until the 17th of May to withdraw out of the gloss if you want to. But the likelihood is that gloss payment would last for the 2 years. So you just want to think long and hard about that. And if you could rectify the problem, it might be better to get it rectified. Thanks, Conor.
How are we for time, Emer? Just a couple of questions have come in the last minute or two.
Maybe 1 or 2 questions, yeah, if people don't mind sticking with us.
This one is kind of an eligibility one for Jerry. So in terms of the new cap, would it be counterproductive to get rid of scrub and that kind of diverse land, I suppose it is now, when the future payments may be linked to it?
Well, I suppose, listen, we have to be very careful at the moment in terms of March 1st to August. August 1st is the bird season, and removing scrub can be an issue. Really, where you have hedges and you have briars and you have hedges spreading out, certainly bringing them back to the line margin that they should be certainly is something that should be looked at. In terms of the long, there are pockets of scrub and that, that certainly where there was no payment given for them in the past. We don't have any definitive word on that yet, but it certainly looks to be a move towards sort of trying to look at those areas or re-establish some habitat areas again. So they might be more beneficial to leave them, but certainly the concern I'd have is there's a lot of fields where, where there's low intensity grazing going on and there's a continuous spread of scrub roundabout on those plots, and that sort of stuff needs to be tidied up and taken care of. I hope that, right, Conor?
Okay. And just for Enda, there's a person here who did a level 5 organic course back in 2011, but they didn't go into organics. If they decide to go in now, will this course cover them?
Back in 2011, off the top of my head, I'd have to check that out, Conor. I don't know, but it probably is okay. Look, if you just make that person make contact with me in the office in Castlereagh, I'll find that out. Okay? Off the top of my head, I don't know.
All right. Okay, so that's all the questions for now.
Yeah.
Emer, pass over to you.
That's perfect. So thanks everyone to sticking with us for this long. I know it's a complicated topic, so there's always plenty of questions. So I'd like to thank Conor for helping with the questions there, and thank Jerry and Enda. As I said, they're very complicated topics, and you presented them very well. So I'd like to thank you all, and I'd like to thank the people for joining in. There's great attendance, and it's good to see, especially at times like this when we can't all meet up and be face to face with each other. So I just want to point out there's another webinar coming up on the 12th of April, and it's going to be on herbicide use and water quality. So there'll be registration. I'm pretty sure everyone's registered for it if they're registered for this already. So with that, anyways, thanks very much for everyone for tuning in, and thanks to the speakers. So good night, everyone.